G'day, Greg Miller from The Joy of Wood. I'm just messing around here with a spoon. I've started out with one of our spoon blanks. Comes like that, and then I've just been hollowing. Doesn't matter whether you are using a gouge to do the hollowing or whether you're using a hook knife to do the hollowing. Really doesn't matter. They both work really well. Here's a hook knife. This is the Mora 162, which I reckon is probably the most useful for so many things. So I can just come in here and do all that sort of stuff. But this is where I'm heading. The twisty handled spoon. It's pretty cool, eh? It's a lot of fun. I want to show you how we do this. So you notice that with this one, I've maintained that outward tapering of the handle here so that it goes out wider as we come up this end. So if you start out with this parallel, then you'll end up with the same kind of spiral. When you have it getting wider out towards the end, as in leave it like we've done there, then you end up with that kind of shape, which is really interesting. Got another one I'm working on here at the moment. This is my snake spoon, and it's a much tighter spiral. So it's still got slightly tapers outwards. That's entirely up to you. So we've got one of these. What I'm going to do is just round this a tiny bit. Now you can do it with a knife, or you can go in a little bit quicker with a spoke shave and just take a heap of that off. So one method is to put it in a vise like this, making sure you don't do it too tight and crack your bowl. I'm doing this before the back of the bowl is rounded. All right. So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is to put it in there and go back and forth and rotate it. So I'm just putting a little bit of a curve on there. Just makes it a little bit easier later on. Going backwards and forwards, just with a one-handed action. I'm going full length, right from down the end there, up towards the neck. Just getting that rounded. Right. Now I could make that fully round, or I can have it so I've just rounded the corners, and the rounding the corners, you see that's still got a slightly rectangular shape to it there. So that this preparation beforehand in the end will dictate what you end up with. I'm going to round this just a tad more. When I did that one, I don't think I rounded it at all at the beginning. Whereas with the snake spoon, I did round it a bit more like this one. Okay, there we go. So I've just rounded that off. Now, to produce the markings here for the spiral, what I need to do to make life easier is just to wrap a piece of paper around at whatever size I want. So you see this one is laid on more of an angle that way. This one is a bit shorter, so you get just different outcome with it. So what if we start out with a piece of paper, and I'm going to cut off a bit there, maybe about 10 mils wide. I'm probably going to need two of these to do the length. Something like that. Now, which way is the spiral going to go? Is it going to be what we call a left-hand thread or a right-hand thread? Look, it doesn't matter really, does it? So what I want to do is to put it up there and wrap it like this. So the more I spread it out that way, the more open the spiral. Change the angle, go this way, the tighter the spiral. You see the difference? So I'm going to do a more open one on this, and just to make this easier, I'm going to get a little bit of sticky tape from here, just to tape this down about there, just to help to hold it. Doesn't stick that well to the wood, but good enough. Right, so I've got a more open one like that. it's just less work really. All right, and I'm sort of eyeballing it so they're roughly equal. I'll get the next piece. I'm going to tape that on as well. A bit more tape from here. Yep, and around we go. So just going to continue on with that. A little bit wider there, but we'll sort that out. It'll all come out in the wash, as they say. Look at that. Beautiful. Up she comes. How's that? Right. Tape that onto there. Now I've got it on there, I'm going to use that to mark the spiral on here. I need a texture. This will be beautiful. And I'm going to mark along each side of that piece of paper. I'm just going to work my way around doing this. Around and around we go. Now, the next question is, which bit are we taking out? Are we going to take out the bit which is currently covered by the paper, or are we going to take out the bit in between? So you're going to get a different result because one is wider than the other. In this case, I reckon I'm going to take out the bit in between. So as I work my way around here, marking each side of that piece of paper. Now you notice because this is getting wider as it comes out, it will tend to naturally get further apart as you come out, which is quite a nice look. It's a bit like what you've got in that one. This is so much fun. There are so many variables. The bit I don't like about this is so much sanding. I hate sanding. And this is a sander's paradise doing these spoons. Right, there we go. So we've come up into here, gone all the way around. Now before I pull the paper off, so it's not too confusing, I'm going to just go around and mark that area in between so I can tell, because there's going to be a whole lot of lines there. So the bit I'm marking here is what's coming out. It'll all make sense in a minute. Okay, let's peel that off. Around we go. So see, we've just put the stripies all the way around. Thank you, bit of paper. Right, and where that tape was, I'm just going to come in and join those up. Beautiful. Alright, just what we're looking for. There. So the bit I'm going to take out is going to be this area that's got the shading in it. So how do we do that? Well, the simplest way of doing this is not to mess around with knives and gouges, it's actually to use a rasp. What is a rasp? A rasp is a file for wood. The type of rasp I'm going to use for this one will be one of these half round ones. So it's curved on this side, flat on that side. These are very, very useful tools. When you've got really cranky grain that just will not behave for a knife, the rasp is the tool of choice. I'm going to start out with a fairly coarse one, and I'm going to file along parallel to those lines. So we've got a few different ways of doing this. I could put it into the vise and set it up there like that, and I could go across like this. Once you get it started somewhere, so I'm just working on the top side at the moment. I've got to make sure that visually this angle here is parallel to those black lines. Now a rasp, like all filing, works best with two hands, but one hand sits out on the end there. All you need is a couple of fingers. That puts some downward pressure, but also helps with the steering. So this is a bit tricky in the vise held using two hands, but two hands is the most efficient way to do it. I'm just going to shift that a little bit. I don't want to scratch my bench to bits either. Alright, let's see what happens. Otherwise I'll just do it one-handed. Alright, a nice coarse rasp and away we go, keeping an eye on those lines each side. Another way of doing this is to just put it up against something. So here's a bench dog. I just sit that into there like that, and I can just push through here, maintaining parallel. So I'm just doing at the moment the top side, making sure I'm sitting right in the middle of my shaded spiral. And there we go. All right. Beautiful. Okay. So see, I've just started that indent along there. Now I might come back in and just do a little bit more of that. So if I need to move the position, if I'm going to come across this way a little bit, I just put subtle pressure this direction while I'm using the rasp. It cuts best mostly on the push stroke. So I can help to move the position. There we go. So the next thing to do is turn it over, do it on the back side. Same deal, in my shaded area, parallel to those lines. Because the push stroke is when it does its cutting, that's why I've got it this side of my support, which is a bench dog. And this hand is just holding it still and pushing it against the dog. Works pretty well. Okay, so as you can see, we've got this done along that side and along that side. Now we're going to work along the edge, which will join those together. Again, making sure I stay parallel. So I'm still treating this like it's got four sides. So see how that's coming together? I'll do the other side, and then the next thing to do is to roll it around from one to the next. So we'll go around like that. So I'm rotating the piece. I've got to maintain that parallel to the lines. So you can see what's happening in here. That's starting to work really well. This is this corner. So we've got four of those corners to do, but I need to do this side here first. And then we carry on. The right spot to hold this, about there. Okay, now let's carry on and do that rolling action all the way around. So you can actually just constantly rotate it, and you work your way around, joining up each of those 4 sides. You see how useful that little dog is there, just to hold it for me. I don't want to put it in a vise because I can't rotate it. Making sure I'm maintaining that parallel to the lines, which I can still see, a lot of them. So, there it is. So what do we do up in here? I'll probably come around the corner in there, getting close. I haven't shaped the back of the bowl yet because I'm waiting to see where this is going to go. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. It's very subtle. You might only want a subtle spiral on it. But if you want to go deeper with the spiral, like that one there, I'm going to do that again. I'm going to go along and do it all again. Each time you do this, it goes a little bit deeper. Alright, so I've gone a bit deeper. You see that? Now, you can go further and further. The size of the radius of the curve here dictates what's going on in here. So to do this one, which is much tighter, I needed to use what we call a rat tail file, which is round, and that's the size in there. You see that? So you can't do that with an ordinary half round because it's not going to work. But the half round was what we used to do this one. So it comes down to the file and which one you're using. The rat tail was perfect for the snake spoon. Right, so here we go. What we've got is these sharp corners on the top. Here's the trick for rounding them. What we're going to do is use the file and go the opposite direction. So we're going to go across, not that way, but that way. What that will do is that will knock those sharp corners off that are right there. I'll show you. Now, can you see the difference? That's starting to round those out. And I'll go along there a couple of times until we start to get that nicely rounded. And after that, it's a sanding job. Tedious, but pretty amazing, isn't it? Of course, I've still got the back of my bowl to shape. So probably now, while it's still got a bit of square-ishness to it, probably now is a good time. I can use my knife. I can come in with my spoke shave and do it that way. Doesn't matter. But while it's at its, before it gets sort of too weakened or whatever, this is a really good time to mess around with that rounding of the back of the spoon. So I've done a lot of the shaping there with a spoke shave. Best way to do this bit down in here is to use your Sloyd knife, wherever I put it. There it is. So the best way to come in here is with the old Sloydy to get in there to do that transition from the bowl to the neck. But before I get too carried away with that, I'm really happy to leave it like this at the moment and come back into here. Now, remember what I showed you before? We were actually filing across the opposite way. So instead of going parallel to our lines, we're going that way across, the exact opposite, and rotating the spoon as we go. So what we're doing is we're taking those sharp corners off and starting to round everything. Now I'm using a reasonably coarse rasp for this job at the moment to help reduce some of the sanding. What I'm going to do next is to go in with a finer rasp. Right, rough enough for the moment. So what I want now is this one, which is a second cut, so it is much finer. So I'm going to go around and do the usual, the original one. So I'm actually cleaning out in the bottom of those spirals. So by going in finer, we're getting rid of some of the torn fibres that are left by the coarser one. So it's just like going through different grits with sandpaper. I can really see the difference. So I'm staying parallel with those original black lines. Just cleaning that out a bit more with a finer rasp. So I want to end up with this nice rounded spiral. So you can look at this and actually change as you go along for the next round. Change the angle of this slightly and it'll take off some more sharp bits as well. And then of course down to the dreaded sandpaper. As we get up here and the spirals get a bit wider, you have to do this a little bit more because there's actually more material to remove. So I'll do a bit more up this end than I would down that end. And gradually those black lines are going to go. So I'll kick it around a bit more just to get rid of those little sharp lines that are there. I was doing two at once, just doing that side and that side simultaneously. Oh yeah, this is looking good. How's that coming on? Looking pretty good. Getting closer. All right. A little bit more of that and then I'm ready to do the sanding part. Okay. Now with the sanding part of it, one of the things I can do is use my rasp and wrap that bit of sandpaper around it. And away we go, following that same sequence, working down in the bottom on that original angle. I'll work my way around. So I'll work all the way along, then I'll go all the way along on that angle as well. And that'll make a big difference. So that'll be starting to get rid of all the facets on the rough stuff from the rasp. There's another way as well. What about this one? Cloth backed paper like this is really cool. What if I get a piece of that, tear that off? So the width of this determines where you're going to go. So that is going to be all right as I work my way around in here. Kids will know this is doing the floss. Very hard to dance and do this at the same time. So you want to get down in there a bit more, make this narrower. This doesn't work with paper backed stuff, only with cloth backed. See, I can get into all those edges, so the angle that I'm working, and the more I bring it around this way, the more it wraps around, so it does a greater area. You notice I haven't gripped it by the bowl because now I've taken all the back off here. If I put that in the vise and squeeze it tight, I'm likely to crack my bowl, and I don't want to do that. I could hold it in there before when this was squared. Now it's the bowly shape more. You can't do that. So I can just work my way up and down here, and I'm sort of looking for flat facets and things, changing the angle from this away to this away. And then I'm going to turn it around. Of course, got to do the other side. So I can come in with the wider ones, I can go with a thinner one depending on what it is I'm trying to achieve. But in the end, what we want to do is get rid of all the rasp marks and make this nice and even. Sanding is such a crappy job. What'll be really nice will be to get back onto the knife. So I can just keep doing. See, that's coming up really nicely. The flat spot on top of here, you can still see the light bouncing off them. They will go as we round this out. That little sharp bit there will go. Of course, the next question is what happens here? Where does the spiral actually finish? And that is where we go back to using our knife. The knife is the best tool for coming in here to do this transition from the bowl to the neck. And then of course we say, well, where is this going to go? Is it going to extend up around into the back of here? That was one of the things I was contemplating when I did my snake spoon. So I've got this coming around in here, so it's looking like the tail holding the bowl up. I need to finish off my bowl a bit more, but that's just working that one out, whereas this one here, it just fades into there, it just disappears. And that's part of the design challenge. And the other question is, what do you do at this end? That one just kind of disappears into nothing, whereas the snake spoon, I left a bit on the end and I've carved the snake head. That's going to end up with a little Y-shaped red piece of leather glued into the mouth in the very end. So he has a tongue, and that's where that one's going. A lot more sanding work to do yet, unfortunately, and a bit of cleaning up, finishing shaping the bowl and getting this transition in here done. The Twisty Spoon, aren't they cool? It's a whole lot of fun, and it is tedious, but it's worth it because it's something very unusual. And the great thing about it is each time you do it, you play with it a bit more, change the angles, change the widths of the pieces of paper, change the shape of here, so you get that different result with it tapered outwards, just the way that our blanks come. We leave it like that so you've got plenty of options. But if you took that down to be parallel, you would just get something different again. And that is the fun. Spoon carving is a whole heap of fun. It doesn't have to just be done with a hook knife and a Sloyd knife. They're very useful. They're great for lots of things, but sometimes to do something totally different, we venture into using other traditional tools. In this case, we've used the rasp, the half round rasp, or with the snake, it was the rat tail file, which is a rounded rasp. And of course, I love using the spoke shaves and all the rest. And we're back to that beautiful knife. Have fun making your Twisty Spoon. See you in the workshop.